CRAB board to govern road departments as well as the standards of good practice and the required reporting counties have as it relates to compliance with our agency. The Office of the County Engineer specifically will go into great detail on that, and then the relationship between the Public Works Director and the County Engineer. If we have time, if it allows, we will talk about the road fund and the road purpose and then wrap up with questions. But like I said, anytime during this conversation, we'd love for you just to chime in with questions. So next slide, please. Darren, was there anything I missed there, or?
No, just to expand upon the fact that this training works best more as a conversational setting, right? We're going to lay a foundation for the topics as we go through, but anytime you need to squirrel or want to ask a question, do it. We're happy to do that. That's how we learn best, is we just kind of talk about stuff.
So I'm going to just talk very briefly about the County Road Board, just to give you a reminder of who we are. We're not the most popular state agency out there, so a lot of folks don't actually know who we are.
We just aren't the well-known.
Yeah, that's right. While our name might have the word crab in it, we have nothing to do with the crustacean species. Instead, we have everything to do with county road departments. We were created back in 1965. This was after years and years of legislative study on how to handle county road departments and specifically the use of the motor vehicle fuel tax. As some counties were maybe not spending those dollars quite appropriately. And so in 1965, this agency was created, and it was originally just a regulatory agency. You probably know us mostly for funding through a few funding programs we have, or at least that's what we're most popular for, and then the training we provide, but we do have a very large regulatory and compliance component as it relates to our statutory responsibility. That falls under the standards of good practice and compliance, which Derek will talk about a little bit later here. As I noted, we also do have our popular funding programs. We have the County Arterial Preservation Program, CAP. While it's competitive in nature as it relates to you get a distribution based on certain criteria like population size, road, it is kind of a direct distribution to you. Whereas our Rural Arterial Program, the RAP program, is a competitive grant program, and Matt's very familiar with that program. The ELA is our emergency loan program. This program is available to smaller counties, so it would not be available to Spokane, but it is a revolving loan program.
Yeah, it's available.
Oh, it is available. I'm sorry. You're right.
It's only the big three.
It's the big three.
That's right. My apologies. That's right. But the emergency loan account is a revolving loan program that is available to you in times of emergency. Set up much like the Public Works Assistance account, loans at a very low rate. And what it was really structured and built for is, you all know, in times of crisis, you need to get things fixed quickly, and programs like FEMA can sometimes take literally years for you to be reimbursed, and when you need quick cash right then and there. The County Ferry Capital Improvement Program, the CFCIP, is a program available to our 4 ferry counties. That's Pierce, Skagit, Whatcom, and Wahkiakum counties. And then the motor vehicle fuel tax. This is a very large responsibility we have, in that every year your county engineer is responsible for submitting what's known as the road log, and that road log is then assessed by our staff in order for you to be eligible for your motor vehicle fuel tax distribution. The motor vehicle fuel tax distribution is based on very specific criteria, and one of those criteria is it relates to how many lane miles or road miles you have, and so that's calculated in that. In addition to the funding programs, we provide assistance to our county engineer departments and public works departments, like what we're doing today. We have former county engineers on staff, civil engineers on staff. And really, that's one of our favorite things to do is, get a phone call, an email, whatever it is, and provide counsel and expertise to your public works employees, and not just public works, frankly. We work closely with the state auditor's office, and they'll ask us questions, and vice versa. Sometimes we'll get questions from your finance departments and various others. And then finally, advocacy. We are based in Olympia, and while we're a state agency and can't quite lobby, we certainly can advocate for our counties and our county road departments at the local and statewide level. We often serve as a voice for counties and advocate for you, and specifically transportation-related issues with the executive and our legislators. So any questions there about our agency? I will note that we are made up of a 9-member board. Commissioner French is one of our board members. So hello, Commissioner French. The other unique thing of our agency is our board is appointed by the Washington State Association of Counties. While other agencies like us, the Transportation Improvement Board, the Public Works Board, while a WASAC might nominate individuals to be on our board, then those names ultimately go to like a governor or the Secretary of Transportation for final approval. CRAB is set up very uniquely in that WASAC is the appointing authority, and I can't think of any other state agency that has that special relationship. And I think WASAC takes that responsibility very seriously. It's Commissioner CUNY and your peers that are responsible for making those appointments. So next slide. I think that's going to be, is that Drew or Derek that's next?
No, that's still you.
Still me.
Specific duties of the board.
Yeah. So, okay, thank you. So the specific duties of our board, the statutory requirements under RCW 36.78.070, and for your information, you should have a workbook in front of you that has all of these RCWs, which are hyperlinked on the PowerPoint. You can access those. And did we send out electronic?
You have 2 versions of this. We're looking at a PowerPoint that is derived from the workbook that you have. You have a paper copy of that. You also should have been distributed. We sent to you an electronic version of this workbook. And if you look at that, there's 2 uniquenesses about that. You'll see text that is highlighted in orange. That denotes activities, information, things that you should be aware of that directly involve the legislative authority, an action of the legislative authority, or directly involves your activities. Secondly, anything highlighted in blue is a hyperlink to statutes, rules, and other resources that you can go and expand on the topic that you're currently looking at. If you need a copy. Okay.
So as we noted, one of the primary duty of our board are to establish by rule the standards of good practice, which I noted Derek will talk about here in a few minutes. Also establishing the reporting requirements that are required of counties with respect to those standards of good practice. Those are due on an annual basis and make you eligible for things like the distribution of the motor vehicle fuel tax. So that's an important component. Our board also receives and reviews reports from counties to determine compliance. We also advise counties, as I noted earlier, on issues relating to county roads. And they're responsible for assisting counties in developing uniform and efficient transportation-related information technology resources. Additionally, our board must report annually to the State Department of Transportation and the legislature on the activities of county road departments and their health, and that comes through in our annual report that we submit on the 15th of January every year. And then finally, our board administers our grant programs, the Rural Arterial Program, the CAP program, the CFCIP, and the Emergency Loan Program. So those are those primary duties. And they hire the executive director, me, even though that point isn't up there. All right, next slide. Now I think it's Derek.
Yes, that's so. As a state agency, we're responsible for writing rules that implement the RCW that is associated with County Road Administration Board. That first one up there, the general organization and policies of CRAB board. It is a 9-member board, 6 county commissioners, 3 county engineers. The next one, standards of good practice. We're going to go through that in a little more detail in the next couple of slides. 100 through 210, the Rural Arterial Program. 300 is the CAP program. 400 is the County Ferry Capital Improvement Program. 500 Emergency Loan Program, and 600 is our newest WAC, which is deals with the equipment rental and revolving fund, so ER&R. Next slide, please. So standards of good practice. Why this is important? Every county must be in reasonable compliance with the standards of good practice and all statutes and rules that govern the administration of county road department. What's at risk if you are not is access to your motor vehicle fuel tax, access to the arterial program, access to your CAP, and potential repayment of any unclosed arterial program if you are found out of compliance and recalcitrant and not moving back inside the box. So standards of good practice, we have 13 now or 12? 13. Maintenance management, basically it just says that you will use some formalized methodology in programming, budgeting, implementing, and reporting, and doing again in your annual road maintenance program. 3612, county engineer vacancy and change. So anytime you have a change or a vacancy in the position of the county road engineer, the legislative authority is responsible within 5 days of reporting to the CRAB board that there is a vacancy and what your plan is, or if there's been a change, like somebody retires and somebody is promoted and moves up, who that person is, what their contact information is. And we will check when you hire a new county engineer. It's our obligation to check their credentials, and it's been more than one time where we have checked into a newly appointed county engineer and they don't meet the state criteria, and that's quite embarrassing. So make sure if you are going through the process of hiring a new county engineer and you haven't had to go through that process in a while, you want to read 13612. Priority programming, that just indicates that you have some sort of formalized method to take in and vet potential county road capital projects into your 6-year planning process. Continuation of that is your 6-year transportation improvement program. That is your 6-year perpetual road and bridge and other planning document, and that helps inform the things that you will actually be doing. Annual construction program, that derives from your 6-year program. So annual construction program is what you're declaring to the public you will be actually accomplishing in the next year. Part of that is whether or not you're going to use your own forces, county forces, to conduct capital work on your road and bridge system. And that is a compliance issue. There's a limit that every county has. You have to stay within that limit. County forces construction, again, we're kind of rolling down as we go. So that counties have the largest ability in the state of Washington. County road departments have the largest ability in the state of Washington to conduct capital activities with your own forces. Spokane County is probably $3 million in capacity, or close to it, 2.8. You remember?
You'd be at the high end.
Yes.
It's over 3.
Is it? Okay.
You never get near it.
Yeah, you never get there. But you have that ability. And that's unique, and you want to protect that. Depending on what your road department chooses to do on their own, you do it very well. And you can do it much more cost effectively than going through the normal process in the state, which is to competitively bid all capital.
Hey Derek, can I just jump in for a
Yes,
second?
please.
So the reason we don't get near that is preservation is not considered capital. So we do a lot of overlay work and chip seal work. I mean, millions and millions of dollars, but that's not capital. So just to be clear, and I'm not saying our crew doesn't do 3.8 million worth of work, and a good year will be closer to 8, but all that is preservation money. It doesn't fall under the.
And so like our bridge repairs and all of that, that's all preservation. It's not
Maintenance is
capital.
maintenance.
Maintenance is maintenance.
Capital is like, I want to replace that bridge.
Yeah. So, and our bridge crew does do work that could be construed as capital, but it's more under the maintenance guys.
And so this is the amount of work that we can self-perform.
Yes. Yep. And only your road department has that ability. Your maintenance, like say building maintenance, doesn't have that. Inspection of bridges. So according to the National Bridge Inspection requirements, any bridge that you have in your system over 20 feet is part of the NBIS, National Bridge Inventory, and you're required, based on the type of bridge, to do certain inspections on a routine basis and report to the state of Washington, who has then the responsibility to report to the federal government. Traffic law enforcement. So this is a sticky one. This is one where we don't talk about reasonable compliance. This is strict compliance. There's only really one way to get it right and a lot of ways to get it wrong. And the penalties can be harsh. So this is one you want to pay attention to. So if you are thinking about diverting road levy from that process, to current expense, rather than do a levy shift, you want to pay attention to that whack. That would kind of keep you inside the box. Accident reporting. So every county, or actually every agency that has road infrastructure is required to respond. So what happens is a collision happens, law enforcement responds, they do a collision report, and eventually gets into the state system. There's not enough information in that collision report for DOT to then populate the report they need to send to the federal government on collisions. So there is a portal set up for every jurisdiction that has transportation infrastructure. We're talking about counties here. And so county will get a query for information regarding the location of a collision. And every county is required to respond to at least 90% of those requests from DOT on an annual basis, calendar basis. Accommodation of utilities. So the county road right-of-way is primarily, its primary responsibility is county road, but a secondary use is utility corridors. And because utilities are public services, you are required to accommodate and have an accommodation policy in place to accommodate utilities for operation and location within the county road right-of-way. County Road Department Administration, this covers a lot of things. Covers primarily the relationship between the legislative authority and the county road department and the county engineer regarding a number of required policies and some required reporting and notification to CRAB if certain things happen. An example would be your organizational chart. As things change, you may change your org chart, how Public Works and the county road department's role is within that, and the county engineer's role within that overall structure. If you change and adopt a new one, you must report that to us, and we have the responsibility to review that to make sure that the county engineer's responsibilities haven't been subsumed somehow in some change in organization. And then we'll work with the county to correct that if something like that happens. Another example is if you have a lawsuit and you lose it and it has to do with county road, you're responsible for reporting that to us so that we can look into that matter and see how it, in the broader sense, affects counties as a whole. County road logs, Jane touched on this already. Every county is responsible to maintain their county road log, and its primary purpose is to help us determine your lawful share of the motor vehicle fuel tax distribution, as well as eligibility for other things like RAP and CAP and those sorts of things. And pavement management, lastly. You have a lot of paved surfacing county roadways, so hot mixed asphalt, BST, some concrete, maybe, well, the city's got the brick stuff. I don't know if you have any brick. But any paved surface requires, of a federal functional classification 08 or above, requires the county to manage that pavement in a computerized system on a 2-year basis and manage your pavements with that information. And that also makes you eligible to receive the county arterial preservation monies that help pay for it.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes, please.
Going back to the utilities, this isn't actually a CRAB duty or responsibility, but I did want to note, and I'm sure your legal counsel is familiar, and probably many of you, but there was a court case out of King County a couple of years ago that has ruled in favor of counties in your ability to levy franchise fees in the right of way. And King County is moving forward with a process to build utilities in their jurisdiction. And I know that they've been very open to sharing the formulas that they're coming up with, but this was a very big win for counties as it relates to your ability to, charge for those using your right of way.
Secondary uses.
Correct. At this point, I don't think legal experts believe it relates to broadband. But it's more the traditional, water, sewer, utilities,
Yeah.
but.
Water, sewer, power, electrical are the big four that are clearly subject to this. Communications, there's an argument for and against. It's more of a fight than you want. So if you can get 4 out of the 5, that's a win, right?
But
Yeah, so the issue is that many of the communication telephone companies through corporate evolution can tie themselves back to Ma Bell, who have some territorial rights like railroads do. And so it's just not worth the fight.
I think this is the next big fight is that, I know we're squirreling here, but are the Comcasts
But I
of
can
the
tell
world.
she's like, I want to know.
Yeah.
Most internet providers are unable to tie their way back that far.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the legacy ones certainly.
Correct.
but-
They're
But
trying
yeah,
to.
Yeah,
They're trying
it's
to
about
make that argument.
50-50, and anybody who's just strictly like cable TV or whatever, they're totally at the whim of the county.
Presume natural gas is in that as well.
Yeah, so the big four, so sewer, water, gas, electrical, those are clearly ones that you can go after.
My understanding was that we had to have actual costs to show what the fees were based on, is that correct?
It makes your argument better, but if you just have standard policy that is based in real world, you're not trying to extort massive amounts of money, right? Yeah,
Keep in mind, the premise is you're charging a rent. You're the landlord, you're
Right.
charging them rent. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a fee that's attached to a physical cost of maintaining what they have done to your right.
yeah, you're managing the right of way for the benefit of the public. It's actually the public owns this stuff, right? And we're managing that right of way for their benefit. Its primary purpose is transportation, the roadway, but you're required under the law to accommodate utilities, and you shall have policies.
The challenge is, if you adopt it, chances are that's just going to get passed through to the customers. The customers are the voters. They're the ones that are getting the service. That cost benefit of implementing that,
Right.
that's this question.
And it's your role as the legislative authority to make that determination whether you want to do that. But I know for King County, it's going to be a significant amount of money. So, and unfortunately, I don't think the road fund is benefiting, but.
Yeah,
I had to say that part.
Yeah. Sorry.
yeah. The legislative authority does have the choice where to put that money. It makes sense to put it back to enhance the road and bridge system, especially if you're doing things like currently taking a levy shift or a diversion. You want to try and make your road department whole before you make any other decisions. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, just real briefly, all those standards of practice that we talked about, plus some others, other rules and statutes have compliance aspects to them and reporting aspects that counties must report to County Road Administration Board. 3 different reporting periods in the year. We're coming up on December 31st. Much of what you're reporting on to us by the end of December is what you're planning on doing next year. There's a few things that are current year, but it's mostly about what you're planning on doing, what you're declaring to the public that you intend to do in the coming year, 2024. March 1st is the current year report, and you're reporting to us on your road levy, what you adopted for your road levy for the year, and anything that you are doing to yourself regarding diverting resources out of county road to other activities.
And baked levy capacity.
So you're reporting levy shift, diversion, if you're paying for direct services like traffic law enforcement out of the road fund. Question?
So is that part of your report that you guys do, is showing what the 39 counties have done
We,
with that?
in our report, there is one of the data pages in the back that show what every county is doing each year.
Okay.
Yep, and I'm happy to, this is online, but happy to provide you all with copies. Our annual report will be coming out for 2023 in January. So, but the back of that document shows every county.
Just because I know in the past, several years ago, we did the shift for law enforcement. I shouldn't say shift, but did that piece that we haven't done for since 2019.
It's been a couple of years.
It's been a few years since.
Yes, since we've done that, and have done
Primarily
the
levy shift.
levy shift, the road shift every now and then. But then does it also talk about how much stays in roads? Because like when we've done the road shift, then at least half of it has gone back into roads. So, I
So
don't know
we
if you
wouldn't
guys will
see
track
that part where you have taken a levy shift and then return, because you do it for a particularly interesting reason. You've got some economic stuff going on that theoretically potentially produces a little bit more in the long run, so you're able to turn back some of that money to county road. That's a unique position to be in. Most of the time, if there's a levy shift or diversion, it never comes back. So we wouldn't be able to capture that because it becomes a revenue line item, right? And so we don't see that kind of detail. We could if we went in and looked at the state audit report. We don't typically get into that level. We do require a budget summary from County Road in December, but it doesn't get down to that detail.
Okay.
There is some revenue detail, but it doesn't get down to that kind of line item detail.
Thank you.
And just real quick, we've been talking about levy shift and diversion. They are similar, and sometimes people talk about them interchangeably, but they are different mechanisms. Levy shift is actually a decision to shift taxing authority from the road district to the general district. So the road district is just an unincorporated area of the county. So you might want to say, hey, I'm going to switch, or I want to shift $1 million of taxing authority from the road district to the general district. So that $1 million would have been collected just on the parcels in the unincorporated area of the county. When you shift it now, that $1 million is collected on all the parcels in Spokane County, both unincorporated and incorporated.
I see Commissioner French has raised his hand.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is going back just a little bit, but Jane, when you were talking about King County and their efforts to try and put a utility tax on, as I understood, the road system, did I hear that accurately? And were you able to, or can you get us the formulation? Because Probart and I, back in 2001, developed a utility tax formula for roads back then that we were starting to push with the legislature. And I'm just curious how much the King County's proposal now would mirror what we did back almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah, Commissioner, happy to get you information. I know that Axel Swanson at the Association of Counties has sent I believe, all the county engineers, maybe not, but happy to get you that information, exactly what King County is doing. My understanding, and there are smarter people in this room that can go into more detail, but the court case ruled on the right-of-way and the county's ability to levy franchise fees within that area. And so it's not necessarily, taxing the road, it's the right of way, and your rights to that.
And it's not something that you could implement now. You've got franchises that are already signed and under a term, right? So you can't just say, well, we want to cancel our franchises and start again.
All of our franchises have language that says that we can choose to charge them, that we aren't currently when they sign it,
Oh,
but
good.
that we could charge them. Not all, most of them that I've seen, I should say. They do object to that language, but we say we retain.
Good.
We don't currently charge, which is the
Yeah,
facts. We don't
that's-
currently charge for any other than the Comcast one, which is federal
Right.
regulated, but it is in most of our franchises.
That's fortunate that you were able to keep it in there. That's good. Most franchise language doesn't have that. And so you would have to wait for renewal. And most franchises are either 25 or 50 years.
I think Commissioner French maybe had more to say.
Okay. No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, last reporting period is April 1st, and it's primarily about what did you accomplish last year? From everything from your capital program to county forces, maintenance, a number of reportings that are specific to some smaller subsets of counties, like marine navigation and mortgage, which is only subject to the two island counties in the state. So, but it's primarily about what you did last year. All of this reporting rolls up into your annual certification, which allows the CRAP board to tell the state treasurer to continue to give each county their lawful share of their motor vehicle fuel tax distribution every month. So it's, when we do the annual certification in April, it's looking back. We're certifying that you were in compliance, reasonable compliance with all of your activities for the prior year, so that you continue to get your motor vehicle tax in the current year. So it's 1 year back. Any questions about reporting?
Commissioner Kearns?
Has a county ever not been in compliance and therefore not gotten their share of the gas tax?
Yes. And so I'll preface that with some information. Typically what happens is we get a county self-reports, there's something going on, or we find out about it early and we work with the county to correct before it becomes an issue. That's our best scenario. That's what we want to do, is get in early and help you get it fixed before it ever becomes an issue. If it's something that can't be fixed readily, but isn't egregious enough to say, well, no, we're just going to cut you off, then you get what's called a conditional certificate of good practice. And it comes with a performance improvement plan. You have time to fix whatever's going on. That happens, we've got actually 5 counties or 4?
Well, now we're down to 3.
We're down to 3 that have conditionals at the moment, having to do with load rating for some bridges. They're out of compliance with the date of requirement. That's kind of unusual, even for counties to have a condition. We have never, this board has never voted, and staff does not make this decision, the board does, the 9 members. The board has never voted to not give a county their certificate of good practice, and in doing so, suspend all their motor vehicle fuel tax, suspend their eligibility for RAP program, and all of our programs. The governor did it to 1 county, and it was based on non-compliance with GMA back in 1999 or 2000.
Well, I'll just interject a little bit here. I think you all know, but a lot of staff touches this and helps with the reporting effort. We have a very large road system that I'm always harping on. And so, we have 2.5 people just for pavement management that rate the roads and populate the database that feeds our pavement management program that helps decide which roads we're going to do what treatment on at what time. And that's just pavement management. We have another person that's fully dedicated to the road log. It's the bulk of her job duties. And so it's a big lift, it's a team effort. We have arguably a half dozen people that a lot of their responsibilities revolve around this reporting. So it's not a small effort, and CRAB is really helpful on their end, helping us get there each year. And because we do want to stay in compliance, obviously. Our gas tax is a significant portion of our revenue.
I will add that I've been around forever, essentially, and CRAB has consistently worked to keep us in compliance. Their goal is not to catch us or get us in trouble, it's to help us meet those. So they're absolutely supportive of us being in compliance and helping us get there.
Again, Commissioner French?
Yeah, and I think that, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that this is really a reflection of two things. One, I think the CRAB staff and leadership does an outstanding job of trying to be a resource for counties. And counties sometimes get themselves into challenges for a variety of reasons. But the other thing is that I really credit the CRAB board, which is, the majority of the CRAB board members are county commissioners that, have walked in these shoes, or they're county engineers that are trying to get into compliance and stuff. And so there is I think, a sympathetic understanding about the challenges, and especially for counties that are going through transitions. And that's when you find these kind of things happening more than not. But if it was a different makeup of staff or a different makeup of the board, I think the outcomes could be dramatically different. But I really do think that the structure works very, very well for counties. Thank you.
So we are primarily a regulatory agency, but we feel our best way to accomplish that is to help you be successful. We'd much rather spend our time and resources doing that than swinging a stick, because that's no fun for anybody. Any questions on the reporting? You will see, as the board, you will see some of that come across your desk. Not all of it, but some of it, because the chair must sign 3 or 4 of those along with the county engineer. Okay, we're going to move on to specifics about the county engineer.
So, Office of the County Engineer. Matt, you actually gave a great segue into it. It's something we talk about often. We talk about the county engineer, but really, a lot of times it's the Office of the County Engineer. County engineer can't do everything. You have to have a great staff. You have to have people that are dedicated to be able to accomplish those things. So when you look at statute, a lot of the statute, it reflects to the Office of the County Engineer. Yes, there's some direct connection to the physical person, but a lot of it is the Office of the County Engineer. So RCW 3675020, all the county roads shall be established, constructed, maintained by the legislative authority. That's this body. Such work shall be done in accordance with the adopted county standards under the supervision and direction of the county engineer. So now we're identifying the person and that responsibility, and then the county legislative authority's responsibility for the road system. Quick trivia question. How many of you here are aware that county commissioners didn't exist? It was county road commissioners that existed. Over time, that job morphed into becoming county commissioners. But originally, when the state was formed, in its early days, they were county road commissioners, not county commissioners.
Al contends that he knew.
Just for the record, I was there when it changed.
So legislative authority, each county shall employ the county road engineer. That county road engineer reports directly to the legislative authority. Okay, 3680020 shall be a registered and Washington licensed professional civil engineer and serves at the pleasure of the board. Derek mentioned we do check when counties say, hey, we're going to hire John Smith or Jane Smith to be our new county engineer. We do check, and it has happened that that person being hired is not a licensed civil engineer. That's where we have to have that awkward conversation with the county of, we understand you've extended an offer of employment, but you have to pull that back because there'll be a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer. Law says that can't be your county engineer.
They have to have their PE.
Yes.
Yes. Now, oftentimes, I'm a great example. Somebody will come from a different state. I came from Idaho down to Columbia County. And there's a grace period because you have to apply through comedy to get your Washington license. There's an understanding that that does take some time. There's a few little things that have to be worked out, but it happens.
Usually offers contingent upon getting your Washington license within 6 months.
Because oftentimes, just as streamlined as that process is, it takes usually 3 to 4 months just to get that through the Board of Professional Engineers. Next slide. So, the Office of the County Engineer, the legislative authority. The relationship seems clear, but oftentimes it can be cloudy. But the legislative authority, you set policy, you set the budget, you set the level of service. Now, county engineer will come to you with recommendations, but ultimately it's the board that decides the level of service on your roads. That has that direct impact to the budget. It's through that budget setting process. You review the county engineer's performance, and you should be receiving regular updates from your county engineer. That's great that you know who Matt is. Matt knows who you are. That's possible.
Who's that guy?
It's not always the case. You'd be surprised, but that's not always the case.
Correct. County engineer, their job is they implement the policy that you set. They lead and they manage that department. They manage the personnel and the budget, and they report regularly to the legislative authority. One of the things when we do our training for the Office of the County Engineer training with new county engineers that we really try to impress upon them, and we repeat it over and over and over, is make sure that you have open communication with your board. Make sure that you have regularly scheduled workshops with your board so that that line of communication is always there. Your door should always be open, especially when it's a commissioner that's coming to you with a question or a concern, and being responsive to those requests. Make sure that, like I said, you have that regularly scheduled time. You know what? Sometimes you may end up talking about the WSU game Saturday before, but you still have that open line of communication. It's critical that be there.
Let's talk about level of service a little bit.
Okay, so level of service, the impact there. So we talk about policy, we talk about budget. Level of service, some of the things where that factors in. Snow removal. Which roads do you go out and do you plow immediately? Which roads do you authorize overtime on?
What's your
Which
snow and ice
roads?
control policy, right?
Correct. Which roads do you then say defer? Because there's nobody living on it. It's not attached to a mail or a school route, those sorts of things. Grading, going out with your graders. How many times are you going to go touch this road that say has 1500 ADT on it versus this road that has 10 because it serves a couple of houses? Those sorts of things. That's that level of service we talk about, that the board sets that policy with the guidance, of course, from the engineering staff, because then that has that direct impact on the budget. It has that direct impact on performance, all those things.
If you set a budget lower than what the county engineer tells you needs to be set at in order to do the work necessary to keep the road system at par for the coming year, if you set the budget lower than that, you are making a level of service decision. There will have to be decisions made on what you do and do not do in order to meet that lower budget. So even at budget time, if the county engineer brings you a budget, this is what I need to do next year in order to keep our system at par. If for some reason you can't accommodate that through issues of levy shift, diversion, whatever, you are making a level of service decision. There's something you won't do.
County engineer's job then isn't to make that cut to the budget. The county engineer's job is to make sure to advise the board of the impacts of that cut and those options for how to make that cut. That's often going to involve a level of service every time. Okay, next slide.
That's me. So the person holding the title of county engineer, that person is a public official. There are only 2 positions within county government that are statutory appointments to an office. And one of them is the county engineer, the other one is the fire marshal. So as a public official, they're also a professional engineer. They have to be a licensed professional civil engineer in the state of Washington, experienced in road work. They're a member of a county department. The Office of the County Engineer is more than one person. How many people do you have in the road department?
About 300.
300, and that's admin staff, that's engineering staff, that's operations and maintenance staff. Right? The engineer is responsible for everything those 300 people do. But he can't, or she can't, do that, all that work alone. The budgeting, the administration, the personnel, the actual work. They're involved, but they can't do it all themselves. So it's a team effort, and you heard him say that. And they're responsible, primarily responsible for oversight, leadership, and quality control. Probably one of the worst things that can happen to a county engineer is they get on what's called autopilot. Everything's going fine. People are telling me what they're doing is fine. If you're not constantly looking and digging and asking questions and, well, why are we doing it that way? Right?
Well, as luck would have it, we haven't had conditions for autopilot in a while, so it's not a real worry. I do want to jump back a little bit. When I said that, we have 6 people that spend a lot of their time on that reporting, that was a little misleading in that is really our planning effort for our department. That's where we're going and why. Even if the reporting requirements didn't exist, we would be doing all that work. I just wanted to be clear about that not useless regulation or reporting. That's all of our pavement management's how we maintain the road system in the condition it is by spending our money as wisely as possible. So it's real important we do that. I mean, that's our priority array that feeds our 6-year plan, that feeds our annual construction plan. It's not frivolous at all. All those efforts would be going on independent of whether there were reporting requirements. So I just wanted to get that out there because we're not spending 6 FTEs worth of time and effort just to meet reporting. That's how we guide our overall program.
That's why those, we call our standards of good practice, that's why they're called that. They're not what you shall do, it's what is the right thing to do to make sure that we're successful. And lastly, everything the county engineer does, everything that the road department does, and everything that you do in your job in leading and your oversight activities of the road department are all regulated activities based on the protection and use of the county road fund. The road fund is what's called a special purpose fund, and to misappropriate it is a felony. And the legislature felt that it was important enough that they created its own RCW to say just that and say, look, we want you to use your road fund for what it's supposed to be used for. And the reason behind that, and the reason behind ER&R, is that ultimately you are responsible for emergency response. And you're supposed to have a fleet and people and a trained workforce available to respond to that. And you can't do that if you're not spending the money you're supposed to spend on your road fund activities. Any questions?
Next slide. All right, statutory duties of the county engineer. We'll go through these relatively fast. So office has to be at the county seat. You have an office here in Spokane, Matt?
Across the road.
Not everybody can say that, but that's okay.
There's
It's not a road anymore, though.
I know, we call it a road. We call it crossing the street to come over here. Hasn't been a street in a day or two, so.
There are several counties that have an office in the county seat, or their primary office is actually in the population center. Great example, Douglas County. Yes, they have an office in Waterville, but really County Road is all out of East Wenatchee. That's the population center. Benton County, Kennewick versus Prosser. Actually,
Thurston's, their office is just a few miles out of town, but that's where their operations center is. So it makes some sense. And it's one we don't spend a lot of time slapping anybody's wrist for.
I always used to chuckle. We built a new facility down in Columbia County when I was there, and depending on which corner of my office I was in, I was either in compliance or out of compliance because the city line literally cut right through my office, where it was at. So 368020 have to be duly qualified and experienced in highway, road engineering, and construction. Just because you're hiring a licensed civil engineer, if they don't have road and bridge experience, you can't hire them as your county engineer. 030, certified to the board and has authority over all estimates and all bills for labor, materials, provisions, and supplies. That's why every voucher that you see that comes through for you to sign and to approve, if it involves county road funds, it has that gentleman's signature or his designee if he's not available to make that certification to you, because that is a statutory requirement. Office of County Engineer is an office of record. That is the only other one besides the auditor's office in county governance. That's primarily for obviously road-related records. Surveys, although the courts have eroded that significantly through a Franklin County lawsuit. So anymore, yes, county road should always have copies of those documents, but they aren't necessarily going to be the official office record. That
Any
is still the
county
auditor.
any county road document that has title implication. When I say title, we're talking about land title. So easements, right of way, any of that kind of stuff has to be also recorded in the auditor's office. But his office must also keep copies of all of that as well.
Shall ensure that a highway plat record is kept and publicly accessible. We talk about the road log. That's essentially, that's what that is that road log. Okay, excellent. RCW 368060, maintain and has authority over complete and accurate records of all expenditures for administration, bond and warrant retirement, maintenance, construction, purchase and operation of road equipment, purchasing manufacturing materials and supplies, and maintain a true and complete inventory of all road equipment. Again, all things county road fund. Now, this is another area where we tend to just defer a little bit to the counties, because oftentimes the county auditor will say, those are my records, because statute in other places says that they have to maintain all of those documents themselves. There, we just advocate, make sure you have a working relationship between you and your county auditor's office. You still have to reconcile your books, especially that's usually where it comes up, it's on the warrants. So Columbia County, we had a system, we would hold on to them for 3 months and then return them back to the auditor. So we could close out our books on a monthly basis. We still have those records, and then they would go back to the auditor for maintenance. And then 070, all road construction work in accordance with plans and specifications provided or prepared by or under the direct supervision of the county road engineer. Just like in any other engineering office, you have a principal, usually then mostly they have staff then that accomplish a lot of that work, but it's under the direction of the county engineer. Supervision, does that mean fancy plans and specifications for everything? Absolutely not. Many a time I sent my maintenance crew out with a page out of an engineering comp pad, the drawing, the sketch, here's what I want you to do, and off they go. Next. So, county engineer and the public works director. Derek mentioned that there's only 2 positions that by statute have to be appointed within a county engineer and the fire marshal. However, a lot of counties also, though, have a separate operating model that involves a public works director that is separate from the county engineer. Oftentimes, you'll have your system set up that county engineer reports to the public works director, but also you still have to make sure that that relationship between the county engineer and the board is not impinged in any way. Typically, this is done through partnership, the 2 individuals working together as a team and not in opposition of one another. So, county engineer, required statutory appointment by the legislative authority. Each county shall employ county engineer. We've touched on that. Public works director, that's a management structure decision by the legislative authority. It's very common, especially in the larger counties. Small counties, it's always a combined position. Medium-sized counties, 50-50. The larger counties, every time. with one exception. And that's because they do not have a public works.
They don't even have a public works director.
Yeah, and that's Yakima County. They just have a whole bunch of small little departments to do
We
it.
got a lot of direct reports to the board. That's gotta be busy.
Organizationally leads the Public Works Department, is responsible for services like utilities, solid waste, surface water, parks and rec, building planning services, public outreach. Anything else that your Public Works Department does, Matt, that's not on that list?
Yeah, he does a lot of stuff. It's been a great relationship, just to get that out there. I'm thrilled you decided to hire Kyle, and it's a great partnership. He and I work really well together and complement each other really well. It's been really nice. Right now, he's busy learning pre-treatment, so the world I don't have to get into.
Tree treatment.
It's important.
It's still snowing.
Yeah.
Personnel and finance are co-responsibilities of the two positions. Again, the county engineer has that responsibility over the finance side, county road fund, and then also over all of the staff that report either directly or indirectly to the county engineer. So some counties have a combined position, touched on that. Some counties have no public works director. County engineer retains all the legal responsibilities and authority assigned by statute and by appointment, regardless of whether public works director is a licensed engineer. The exception can be for charter designated delegations. There are charter counties, and there the county exec can delegate some of the duties of the county engineer to people that are not appointed as the county engineer. We then still do our review to make sure that that person meets the requirements of being the county engineer, even though they're not appointed as the county engineer. A classic example is
M&O.
what's that?
M&O.
M&O or plan review development side. A lot of counties, or of the charter counties, they have delegated that to a separate professional engineer that's not the county road engineer. In order to avoid potential conflict, there needs to be enough areas of responsibility other than county road to keep the public works director engaged. Usually where we see that relationship become fractured, it's because the public works director doesn't have enough to do. And so they tend to move over into the county road lane because usually in those instances, county road is far and away the largest part of public works. And so they feel a need to move over because they don't have enough to keep them occupied. The ones that are successful, you have solid waste, you have all these other pieces, and then you have that great relationship. So that director can focus on those other areas, knowing that they've got a great county engineer that's there taking care of the county road and its associated responsibilities. Position of public works director most efficient when that person has a skill set that's complementary to the county engineer. We talked about that a public works director doesn't have to be a professional engineer.
It probably shouldn't be.
It probably shouldn't be, in all honesty. Because oftentimes another area where it becomes a little bit contentious is when you have two professional engineers that have professional opinions. And sometimes those professional opinions don't match. And then it becomes, well, whose is correct? It's going to be the county engineer by statute. Then the public works director and the county engineer must work as a team because county engineer is a statutory relationship with the legislative authority that cannot be interfered with by the director. Oftentimes, you'll see the two will come to board meetings together. They are a team. That's the way that this is a success. If the two individuals can't work together as a team, it's going to be fractured. It's going to show in your staff. Morale will drop. You'll have budget issues. The public will start getting upset. And it's because there's two different directions being put into what it is that you're doing. And as you know, as soon as you start going in two different directions, everything becomes fractured. It just doesn't work in a positive way. When the two individuals work together as a team and they have that support from the board to continue to work as a team, it can be a great relationship. And it usually is a very successful relationship. Any questions?
So the slides we're gonna cover later, and it looks like we're gonna have time. But I want to pause here, because I think this is one of the main things that Mary wanted to cover. Make sure that there aren't any questions or anything you want to back up in the prior slides, any topics that you want to explore more. You know, maybe have us give you some real world examples of you know, situations or how to, you know, illustrate some of the concepts that we've talked about to this point.
I was gonna say, it's just helpful because, I mean, with the Public Works Director, that just changed over the last couple of years, and so, you know, so I didn't know what the difference in the roles were or not. I knew statutorily the board, you know, selects the county road engineer, but, you know, just helpful to know how it all works and what the differences are and how it works as a team. And so it's, you know, just something that, you know, when Scott came on board, we kind of made that decision to go to a public works director. We may have done it just right before, I think, with Chad, I can't remember.
Yeah, right before, yeah. Yep.
So it's just, you know, kind of newer for us to do that, you know, as we were combining areas. And so, so it was just helpful to have the information and understand.
Well, it's
How it
been
all
really
works.
helpful too. I mean, as they pointed out, having a complementary background. I mean, his business background in education is just priceless. I mean, we go to school for engineering. We don't go to school for business. So having that perspective and that worldview is incredibly helpful. And, you know, the budgeting is such a team effort anymore. We have Shannon who knows the ins and outs and does the accounting end. And we have Kyle with the business aspect, and then us on how the road system needs to function and the discussions about level of service so we can make an appropriate recommendation to the board. It's very much a team effort and gets clear down into the departments. You know, our bridge is weighing in with their budgetary needs and signs and signals and the traffic group. I mean, there's a lot of process that never is really probably visible to you folks that goes on that really makes a much more informed recommendation that we can bring forward. It's a great team effort, it really is.
Yeah, so it's helpful. I think the one thing that I see would be helpful to, as a commissioner, to know, since a lot of our complaints are roads that we get from our constituents out in the county area, is really understanding that level of service and what we're, you know, what that really is. Because I know it's like in the past we've talked about how we, you know, got away from, you know, and what does that mean in the budget? And I think having us understand that more, that's helpful for me to know that that's part of our responsibility to understand that. So
I'm glad you brought up complaints. So part of one of those standards of good practice, one of the required policies you're supposed to have in place is an adopted complaint handling policy. Have you ever seen yours and read it?
say it again.
The board legislative authority is required to have a complaint handling policy for county roads to have in place. Have you ever read that one?
I have not read it, but we do have it because I know it gets put into the system over there when we have a complaint, you know, that comes in. I can't remember what it's called, but we just talked about it recently.
Yeah, our RFI database.
There we go.
Yeah, it's very data driven.
So I'll tell you,
Very
one of
thoroughly
the
documented.
most frequently violated policies in the county with respect to what we're talking about, which is county road, is violating your own complaint handling policy because it's constantly changing, typically, isn't even aware that it exists, nor have they read it. And so, and this is the state auditor's favorite thing. Their favorite thing is to come in and say, let's look at all your policies. And they'll almost always find a situation where you're not following one of your own policies, maybe because it's 40 years old and it's not relevant anymore, but it's still in place. So one of the rules we talked about is that frequently review your policies, and if they don't say what you currently do, or they're not helpful, get rid of them or update them, right? Because that's an easy finding for the state auditor, is you're just not following your own rules.
We do have a policy, and was passed by the
I know
board.
you do.
I believe,
You said
maybe
it
in
was.
1985, I believe, that might be wrong, but anyway, and it is fairly simplistic, and to the best of my knowledge, we are following it, just so you know.
She just led right into one. It was like,
Yeah,
well, have you
I know
read
you
it?
have the whole management.
I can send it to everybody if they would like to see it.
By the way, yours is not the oldest.
Okay, no, it's not.
There are 5 required policies currently that shall be in place with respect to the county road department that you must adopt or approve.
We were adopted a long time ago, so yes.
When I got to Grant County and I took over there, and I read the complaint handling policy, it still referred to carbon paper and in triplicate. And I was like, do we still have carbon paper? I don't think we're following this policy. So,
Well, I was gonna follow up on the level of service and how you see counties that are some, rural and have rural and urban areas that they service and balancing those levels of service. I know we recently had to go, I think we're redoing our bike and ped plans because the legislature has adopted some new expectations about how you set levels of service to address reducing climate emissions or reducing
and
CO2
underserved
emissions.
communities and all that,
and making sure you're serving, there's a lot of new things that we're having. So how do you also work with counties to provide advice around like the planning department and the engineering department working together to implement those new, because sometimes it comes in through the planning department and the long-term plans, although it has to be informed by the engineers and the level of service on the roads, but it's a very interesting dynamic.
So much of the content of that, so the requirement exists, and that's basically where we stop. Are you meeting the requirement? Yes or no? So much of the meat of the requirement is local decision-making that we purposely don't involve ourselves in. Those are your decisions. And we shouldn't be involved at a state level telling you what your local decisions are or what your local priorities are. We will just make sure that if the legislature through a bill and statute has said you need to do this, we'll just make sure you're doing it.
So how involved do you get in communicating with the legislature about the levels of service on county roads in more rural or
So
suburban,
level
urban
of
areas?
service is a local decision. The state does not make that decision for you. The state says you shall engage in certain planning activities
Right.
and certain policy directions, right? But how you implement that locally is entirely up to you. And we think that's the way it should be. We shouldn't be telling you how to do that. Where we play in that arena typically is helping to share information. Hey, we know somebody else, another county's working on that, and they're, half a year ahead of you. Why don't you talk to X county and see what their documentation to date looks like?
I think from my perspective as the director, though, it's very helpful to hear from counties and especially voices like yours when you're struggling with that because you don't have enough revenue. And something that CRAB and WASAC and others can do is advocate, with policymakers that we need expanded revenue options, we need more money because the level of service is declining in these areas, or we don't have the ability to focus. And to your point about some of these new priorities, we've been talking about this internally at CRAB. We know that there are a lot of activities that counties are prioritizing, like multimodal, because it's coming from the state down, and also because it's a priority of yours, right? Reducing climate or carbon emissions. And at this point, statutorily, CRAB doesn't have a role in that because of this color of money that comes to our agency or the programs that we have. And so we're exploring how, as a state agency, we can be more responsive to your needs, because your road department is a lot more than just pavement, right? A road. And unfortunately, as revenues have disappeared over time, your level of service maybe has also declined, and that's a struggle that all of our communities are facing. So anyway, what I'm really trying to say is, as the director, please provide me with feedback around where you're struggling and where you'd like to see more state assistance. I can't promise that we'll be able to deliver, but it's helpful.
Do you struggle with that dichotomy of rural, urban,
Well,
as
I
far
just-
as what,
There's probably not, there are only so many counties that have,
significant urban.
that provide services to more urbanized and rural areas, right? So, I mean, you have to have different equipment, just like yesterday at the snow press conference. You operate things differently, in a curbed environment versus a non-curbed environment, right? I mean, everything, you have to think about the nuances and the costs for different levels of service in those different types of environments. So it's just an interesting,
And you'll have
dynamic.
different standards,
right?
You could look at the current county road standards for Spokane County, and you'll have different standards for the urbanizing environment and the, growth management area and those transition zones, right? Versus what you would allow or build yourself in the urban area. And then carried with that are activities that you do in the urban area that you don't do in the rural area, like maintain sidewalks and stormwater facilities and different types of pavement markings and signing that just wouldn't find in the rural area because those issues don't exist out there, they exist over here. So he lives in two different worlds a lot.
Well, and you see that reflected even in our maintenance districts. We have the old corral up north that is focused on the urban winter operations and some of the street work that we do in the off season. So you have that, and then we have rural maintenance shops in the same district to address the rural needs. And level of service is just an incredibly complex and gray topic. It is not black and white. We allocate resources, we come up with a plan. Snow being an example, we'll get a storm and we'll start dealing with it, and then we'll get another storm right behind it before we get through clearing the system, and we'll drop back. We have goals and we have policies, and we know how we attack each storm. But even again, how we attack these, our plan for this year is Kyle, the Public Works Director, Andy, our maintenance supervisor, and I, every time it's going to snow, we're going to put our heads together and come up with a plan for that event. And as the event progresses, we'll keep adapting our plan to it. So it's very subjective. Level of service is, what is our goals? Grading gravel roads that you get a lot of complaints about depends on moisture. When we start getting moisture in the fall, we'll get out there and start attacking it. When we run out of moisture, it gets too wintry. When the ground starts freezing, we stop. So a lot of it's out of our hands in terms of how we attack it. It's Mother Nature doing what she does, and we're adapting to that. Pavement management's a little easier because we are typically implementing our plan, and unless there's some kind of budgetary surprise, we're just going per the adopted plan. But it's very, very subjective. Level of service is our goal, and how we get there changes all the time.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, the other dynamic that has risen here probably more prominently recently is King County, with the Growth Management Act, made a decision early on that they would encourage the cities within the county to annex as much of the urbanized areas as possible. Not realizing that the tax base for maintaining the roads. So King County, this is a dynamic that Councilmember Kathy Lambert constantly brought to the CRAB board, is that her tax base had eroded to the point because of growth management to where they were letting some of their paved roads go back to dirt. So maintaining that balance is critical so that you can have the revenue necessary to maintain the roads, not only in the urbanized area of the urban growth boundary that are unincorporated, but also the unincorporated area of the county. So that balance is part of a conversation that I think we engage in quite a bit. Thank you.
One more thing on level of service where we do get involved, and that is on providing data and mining data, because we get everything from all 39 counties. So oftentimes as a county is looking at that level of service issued, so for example, seal coat work, we're on an 8-year cycle, We're thinking we might have to go to a 10-year cycle. You know, who else has had to make that transition, and what were those issues? That's where we can mine our data and help provide what is it that others are doing. And then also then providing that information, say through our annual report or other opportunities with the legislature and legislative staff to highlight that issue. Great example, I brought up seal coating. It's going to be a key part of our annual report coming up. One of the charts is just from our data, we can show that the counties, 10 years ago, on average, were seal coating every road about every 8 years. Now, because of funding issues and whatnot, that number's down to 12, and it's doing one of these. It's going in the wrong direction. Counties can't afford to go out and seal coat their roads as often as they should be doing. So that's one place where we do get involved with level of service, and that's by providing data and helping to mine data and helping the counties to know what their peers are dealing with as well, and so they can reach out and get some solutions from them.
More questions? We have about 10 minutes left, and we've got 2 topics we can continue to cover if you would choose. Okay, next slide, please. The road fund. So this is what Matt's division operates out of. Road fund was created, it's created by statute 3682, and any funds which accrue for use upon the county roads shall be deposited in the road fund. Examples include your road levy, which is your local property taxes, motor vehicle fuel tax distribution, that's from the state, federal reimbursement funds. These are the 3 main pieces that you get. And federal reimbursements from expenditures on grant programs. And there's state grant programs that fall into that same category. And you have a lot of other small pieces of revenue that come, and some of it would be put into the road fund, like PILT. And do you get any forest tax money in Spokane County? Apparently no. Not state or federal.
Oh, you must get secure rural schools, roads funds, don't you?
Yeah,
No. Well, there's a handful of other small things to go, but everything that is that accrues to the county for road purposes has to be put into the road fund. And once it hits the road fund, from an accounting perspective, you know down to the penny where each dollar came from. But legally, you cannot distinguish between any dollar within the road fund. Once it hits the road fund, it is the road fund, regardless of whether it came from fuel tax or property tax or a grant reimbursement. And so what that means is that all of the rules and regulations for use of those different pots of money all aggregate to every dollar within the road fund. So it was a special purpose, right? And now it's really a special purpose because it's got a lot of rules in order for you to continue to use it. So, and that's the last point there, is regardless of the source, once the revenue is deposited in the road fund, it's no longer legally distinguishable, and all rules and restrictions of the sources aggregate to the road fund. Any questions? Okay, next slide, please. So purposes for which the road fund can be spent. So you'll find this in RCW 3682-070. The stuff you see in the light blue on the left, those are the traditional uses of county road fund. Construction, purchasing road equipment, alteration, repair, improvement, maintenance of county roads and bridges, pits and quarries, materials, the establishment of roadways, acquisition and maintenance of right-of-way, and the office of the county engineer. The middle there in the orange, so traditionally the road fund can be used for indirect services. Some of those are payment of insurance and risk, assigning risk, central services, debt service. Typically those activities in that category are, they have to be, I'm searching for the word, equitable.
Yeah,
Equitably
formulaically distributed.
Yes. So let's say your, what is it, the indirect service plan? What does that call that? I'm drawing a blank.
Direct service.
Okay. So any of
Cost
your
allocation.
cost allocation plans or indirect services for your county, if you are going to charge all the different funds and departments in your county a share of those indirect costs, you have to have an indirect cost plan. It has to be vetted, has to be based on a good 1 to 3 years of actual data, and then you can develop a distribution formula by which you can use for a couple of years and check back and do your reconciliation at the end of the year. The state auditor says after 2 or 3 years, you have to redo that analysis to make sure that your assumptions are still valid, which they probably won't be. They change a little bit. And you're allowed some de minimis variance in there, but that's that category. And then the stuff that's on the right there, that's in the brown, those are things that over the years, activities over the years that have been put in that RCW that currently are legitimate but have not been tested in court. And there's some of those that probably wouldn't test a third-party court challenge, wouldn't survive a third-party court challenge. So park and rides, that's pretty clear. You can provide associated with your county road, like widening the county road right of way, and through various funding sources, grants and the like, cooperate with New Transit and build park and rides, build them and maintain them with the county road fund. There are certain aspects of that are kind of outside of the road fund, like shelters and stuff, but the actual pavement and like that can be done with the road fund. Fish passage barrier removal, as long as it's within the county road right of way and it has a clear nexus to county road, those are eligible. But sometimes the reasoning behind why the decision is being made to like switch out a culvert with a fish-friendly crossing may not be a county road issue. You're paying for it. The legislature says you can, but it's not been tested in court. Marine navigation and moorage, that's only an eligibility for the 2 island counties, San Juan and Island County. So I'm not really going to cover that. And paths and trails. This is a controversial one. So a county of your size is required to set aside a certain percentage, 0.46.
It's 0.042 or 46. I can't remember.
Yeah. It's a small percentage of your motor vehicle fuel tax on an annual basis. How much goes into your paths and trails fund annually?
More than that.
Okay, you can do more, you
Yeah,
just
that-
can't do less.
Right, that's the minimum. A lot of counties do more.
So for me, at Grant County, when I was there, it was about 30,000 a year. It equated to about 30,000 a year that had to go in my special paths and trails account to be used, and it's motor vehicle fuel tax. So it's subject to the very specific rules of the state constitution, which is a limited, very specific list of things that are eligible. Paths and trails is not one of them, but it hasn't been tested in court. So what we say is, okay, if you're going to spend, do you have a question? Okay, you're just flexing your hand. Okay. So if you're going to be spending money on these kind of activities, they have to have a very clear nexus to county road. It has to be in a situation where it exists in the county road right away. Is typically what it's doing is separating conflicts. So you've got a corridor that has a lot of bike ped use and not very good options for accommodating that, because you've got a narrow corridor. It'd be better to put those people on a separated path that is still commuter, and it's separating those conflicts that are constantly occurring on the roadway, whether they are serious injury accidents or not. There's still a lot of conflict. It drives down the functioning of the roadway, gives you a lot of complaints. Those sorts of projects, where you are is a clearly driven by road and traffic issues. Then yeah, that's I used mine in Grant County almost entirely on, I had a list of where my missing links were in the sidewalk system in my urbanized area. And I used that money primarily to deal with those missing links, which did a lot of things. It provided a lot of ADA improvements and things like that. So making those connections for people that are using their bikes and their feet to get around.
Yeah, and I think the board knows, every year we have pathway projects and safe route to school projects, and those all have county match in them that far exceeds the number we're talking about. And in addition, we do ADA on all of our projects too, and make sure the facilities meet current requirements. So there's a fair amount of money every year being dedicated to that.
So you're primarily using it as match money then?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, just the county match. I mean, those projects are usually
that's great.
fairly good sized, $1 million or $2 million is typical. And so just the county match is far in excess of the number we're talking about.
Any questions on that? We got one topic left. Yes.
So you said that once it's in the road fund, whatever the type
Whatever the
of
source.
funds,
Yeah.
then everything is then determined by RCW 3682.070.
Once it hits the road fund, then yeah, it's no longer distinguishable. The source doesn't matter anymore.
So you were saying something about the MVA funds and the legislature saying how those could be spent. So once it's in this fund, then that will dictate?
Yeah, so this statute right here tells you what your general uses and some specific uses of the road fund.
But there's other,
And along
you
with
can use
it-
the MVA funds in the state in other ways, right?
Not if they conflict with this.
Did they always have to go in the road fund?
If they were coming to you for road purposes, yes.
Okay.
You might get some motor vehicle account money, like say to transit or some other purposes
Okay,
that are outside
I
the
see.
road department. Okay, then other statutes apply.
got it.
But if it's supposed to come for road purposes, then it goes in the road fund, 3682. And
Derek,
this is your list of uses.
is there an example of money that would come into the road fund that before it hits it is eligible for something else than this, but the moment it hits the road fund?
Absolutely. The transfer you do from your levy, what you take for levy shift, and then you send some of it back to county road. Before you make that transfer, you can use that money for any county purpose. But as soon as that transfer hits the road fund, it can only be used for road purpose.
So, taking that one step further, if you wanted the road department to do something that wasn't traditionally a road function, but you wanted them to do it for you, don't put that money in their road fund. Hold it in your current expense fund and reimburse them for the activity that you asked them to do. And you have, statute allows you to do reimbursable work.
Oftentimes when we have a compliance issue, it's not because they couldn't do it, it's how they went about getting it. And
It's all
usually
about
it's about
process.
following the money, it's about process. That's where the issue usually comes up on most compliance issues with us.
So the next slide gets into exactly your question is road purpose, expending the road fund. So in developing a response to the question, can I expend the road fund on? There's your formula, these two slides we're going to talk about. Now, I will preface this with the way the law works in the state of Washington is for the state of Washington, the Constitution and the RCW tells the state what it shall do and what it can't do. Everything else is fair game for the state. For local agencies, counties, cities, court districts, whatever, the law is different. The law is by permission. You can't ask the question, show me in the law where it says I can't, because they're not gonna find it. You have to say, show me in the law where it gives me permission to act, either in a general sense or specifically. That's how the law works for us in local agencies. So you must find permission to act. So if you can't find permission to spend the money X way, then you can't. I like he'd smile, and the attorney's going, yeah. I know you. Okay, so here's the rules.
Sir,
Yes, question?
Oh, so, is that different for charter cities?
We're not talking,
Yeah, I know,
charter
I'm just
cities.
wondering, just,
So
just trying to throw you one.
charter cities and charter counties, I don't know about charter cities. Charter counties, a charter is about how you organize your
So I don't think it would
entity.
apply, right?
Mhm.
The
I don't
funding
think there's any
piece.
change.
Yeah.
How you go about it in terms of the organizational structure.
Honestly, I don't know, I mean, I know
I was
some
just
of the
trying to
city
stump you.
statute, but I don't know a lot of it, and I don't know what it means to be a charter city versus a code city. But I know what it means to be a code county versus a charter county. And it's simply about it's primarily about organization, right? If you're a code county, you are organized and you must follow the way the Constitution says you will organize your government and your elected officials no less. If you're a charter county, you get to make some choices in that regard. Not everything, but you can pretty much organize as you will. So Article 2, back to how can I spend the money? Article 2, Section 40, which is known as the 18th Amendment, state constitution restricts the use of motor vehicle fuel taxes and fees to only highway purposes. And in the context of county road, we're talking about county road purpose. So that's the first test. It has to be a county road purpose. Okay. Your local road levy, which is your property tax, is imposed only on the properties in unincorporated areas of the county, and so must be solely used in and for the benefit of the unincorporated area. So there's test number 2. It must be a county road purpose, and it must be in or for the benefit of the unincorporated area. Right? And third, the state must first create and grant an authority to counties to act before a county may exercise a governmental authority, including but not limited to the slide we just talked about, which was 3682.070. Okay. So, has to be a road purpose, county road purpose. Has to be in or for the benefit of the unincorporated area, primarily in. And you must have clear authority granted to you from the state of Washington. Next slide, please. These next 3 points affect the first 3. Commingled revenue in the road fund. So, we were talking about earlier, the motor vehicle fuel tax brings that constitutional protection. The road levy brings you must be used in and for the benefit of the unincorporated area, right? And you must find legal authority to do what you are wanting to do, either in a general sense or specifically. Access to and use of the road fund related revenues are subject to ongoing compliance with all applicable laws, rules, and required procedures, not just our stuff, but any law or rule that affects the administration of county road. And where this comes into play is we're responsible to review every state audit report that comes out from the state auditor's office every year. And we review those for county road and the R&R related issues. And if they find something, then we have an obligation to dog it down and see if it's really an issue or if it's just their interpretation. Quite often the SAO will defer to us, and quite often we argue. And we're almost always going to be on your side, unless there's no credible way to look in the mirror and make the argument.
Which has happened.
Yeah, which has happened. We've lost a few, but we win most. And lastly, other revenue sources such as local option taxes, grants, fees, they all bring unique rules and responsibilities to their use. And so you just keep piling on. It just becomes harder and harder and harder to use that money for anything other than exactly what you're supposed to be using it for. It removes a lot of your discretion. It's really nice with the general fund because you have the discretion to spend that money on anything that you are legally able to conduct business in, right? You can even spend general fund on the road fund, on the road. You're doing that just now. You're sending some of that levy shift back to county road.
Yeah, when we've done it.
When you've done it. You don't always do it. Lastly, there's the RCW that I talked about before. It shall be unlawful and a misdemeanor unless by law a felony or gross misdemeanor. And usually, and the attorney in the room can chime in, it's usually the amount of money that defines misdemeanor versus felony. And I think what is it, $1,500 is the break point?
Depends on,
Depends on the
depends
nature.
on, yeah.
But it's not a very high threshold. To divert or use or authorize or permit or participate in the diversion or use of any monies in the county road fund for any other purpose or in any other manner than is authorized by law. And the legislature thought it was pretty important to state that, the obvious, right? And we'll go back to the 60s, early 60s, when certain large counties
On the west side?
with short names on the west side were behaving really badly with the road fund. And two things drove that. The state said, well, you're not going to behave badly with our money, because a bunch of the money was the motor vehicle fuel tax coming into the road fund. And secondly, part of your bad behavior was not being able to respond to emergencies in a timely manner. What was going on was counties weren't maintaining their fleets appropriately and were breaking down in day one of a response and then initiating mutual aid with the state. And the state's like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. Counties are true subdivisions of the state of Washington. Their purpose is to provide state services at the regional level. When it suits them and it's convenient for them, you're part of the state. Most of the time, they view you as a competitor. But that's how we got here, is the state said, one, you're not going to behave badly with our money, and two, you need to be able to respond just like we in order to protect our citizens and our infrastructure. And we're done.
Yes, so I know we're over time, but I guess one question I have is just as we talk about that funding from the state, so, and realizing the CRAP board was established back in the 60s for those reasons. With the motor vehicle excise tax, does that come through you guys to the counties, or do you guys just are developing the formula of, based on how much the state's dedicating to the counties as to what goes out?
We provide the allocation factors. Our board
Okay.
adopts those allocation factors annually. We then provide that to the state treasurer. And so then they use that as the means of distribution.
It does not pass through us.
It is not, okay.
Actually, none of the money actually passes through us.
But you guys are determining that allocation factor to then that your board approves to
Actually,
get there.
No, there's a couple that, like our grant programs, that money passes through us. And Jane mentioned CAP. While it's competitive nature is based on system size. There, monthly, we do have to then tell the state treasurer how much to distribute from that fund that we manage out to the counties, based on allocation factors that are adopted by our board.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions? Not seeing any others. Anything else you guys want to add?
We're happy to come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just would really like to thank you. And, I didn't say it earlier, I know Matt did, and Drew and Derek, but really the county road board, while we were created in the 60s for compliance issues, really we're here to serve counties and we want you to be successful. And so, anytime you have a question or you feel, oh, should we do this, pick up the phone, don't write an email, but pick up the phone. And we're happy to provide you with assistance and at whatever level of service you need. And happy to come back and provide training and counsel on any other issue. We do a Board of County Commissioner longer 2-day training once a year. We'll do it sometime probably in February, particularly with elections coming up and new people coming on board. That's a great opportunity for those that aren't familiar with county issues to learn a little bit more in depth, and it's a safe space to ask no dumb questions, because it's a lot, especially when you're brand new, fire hose coming at you. And we like to say if you've been in office for a while, sometimes it's really good to come back and just refresh things that you probably had come at you as a fire hose when you were brand new and went right over. And we get county engineers, we do training with them every year as well, and we get people that come back, you know, after having been in the role for 5 years because they realize, okay, what I didn't know, and now I know I didn't know it.
No, and I think that's, you know, I appreciate you guys being here and doing this, you know, modified little training, just because, yes, as I've been commissioner since the end of 17, and you hear a lot about the crab board and all of that, and, you know, different conversations, so it's just nice to have the information to know. And like I said, I think, you know, too, to make sure, you know, when you were talking about the role of the county road engineer versus the public works director, you know, just, you know, so we have that clear in our minds as to what that is.
Yeah.
I think that's just really helpful. So, Matt, you were going to say something.
I'll add it.
Oh, Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So the other thing that CRAB staff does that I think is extremely beneficial is, you know, the drone program and you know, the Gizmo and software training and a lot of that stuff that helps the back side of the room do its job better is you know, without CRAB and the staff being able to provide that training, our people in our office wouldn't be as effective as they are. So, you know, that's another thing that CRAB does that I think just helps us at the local level to be able to do a better job. So thank you.
As a matter of fact, we're doing design system training right now here in Spokane County. Spokane
Yeah.
County, Ponderay, Whitman, a couple other neighbor counties have staff here.
Lincoln.
And if I could just, one more little plug, I want to thank you for the use of your facilities. We're going to be here tomorrow with our board all day. Feel free to pop in. You know, it's not the sexiest of conversations, although we will have 3 counties presenting just on projects that they've done recently. So we'll have Lincoln, Whitman, and Adams here. And then on Friday, we're really excited to do a tour of Spokane County and look specifically at some of the projects that we funded. We have several legislators from your area that will be, and then also Representative Jake Fye will be on the tour, the chair of the House Transportation Committee. And I know a number of you are joining us. And at Matt's team, we're really excited. Dress warm, don't dress up. We're going to be getting on and off a bus, and I brought boots, so.
That statement might be more for us from the
Yeah,
west side.
I know, right? Yeah, I know. But I really want to thank Matt and Brandy, especially in your department, who have done a lot of work for the tour on Friday. So we're looking forward to it.
We've been referring to it as Brandy's magic bus ride. So we've been working on it.
It's
Did
Brandy
you
and
paint the
Steve.
bus?
Oh, yeah. STA's all in on that.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I love it. Well, great. Well, I think looking forward to the tour on Friday, and yeah, we're happy to help you guys. And thanks for coming over to Spokane County to have one of your board meetings.
Yeah.
So that's awesome to come over here. You know, through COVID, things didn't all get around much, but it's nice to see you guys out on the side. So yeah,
Thank you.
So thank you, and appreciate the time today. Thank you very much. And you know, great information. I think it's just good, you know, again, for us to just kind of reacquaint ourselves with all of it. So
We're
thank you.
only a phone call away.
Perfect.
We
Yeah.
do a lot of phone work.
Thank you.
Okay, and then, yeah, if you guys need to take a tour, maybe you have of the room, I don't know, Gina, if we could give them a tour so you know how it's gonna be set up for tomorrow.
Oh, I think we were told we'll be in here. Are we actually going to be across the street? I'm not sure.
I think she had room 2B over in Public Works for you, and we'd be happy to show that to
Okay.
you if you want to set up.
Here,
I don't know, but I think we've got Public Works.
okay.
Okay.
So
Great.
you may wanna follow Matt or take a tour
Yeah.
of where you're gonna be.
Yeah,
so
that
you
sounds
know.
good. So we'll know where to go. All right.
It is.
So
Okay, I
we're
was like,
getting
is there
very,
anything else on the
so
agenda?
I think we need to figure that out because Ron's saying it is in here,
It's on our calendar. The meeting's in here tomorrow, Gina.
the crab board, it's not in the hearing room. Okay.
I can get it.
This is a much nicer room and a bigger room, so that would be great.
We might have an issue then, because we have advertised for a public hearing at the hearing room.
Well, we might be talking two different things. You're talking about the craft board meeting?
Yes.
Yes, that's here. I was talking about the bus ride. and-
Oh,
okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So you've identified the spaces that,
Yeah.
For
public
the
hearing.
board meeting.
Okay, well, there we go, that's what we're just kind of clarifying for everybody.
Great.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much, appreciate it.
Take some candy.
Oh, look at you.
Oh, you brought the
I
candy.
did.